Hi guys! Amidst the chaos as the lights began to dim and the crowd's cheers continued to relentlessly echo, there was one moment that almost escaped the camera's attention. Taehyung didn't just walk past Jungkook. He gently took his hand, not for a moment, nor by chance. The way Jungkook glanced back held an unspoken meaning. The silence between them spoke louder than any performance that night. Fans were divided, some dismissed it as a casual gesture, while others felt it changed everything they believed about BTS, because right after that, something felt like it had shifted their energy, the distance between them, even the way they moved on stage. The question arose, was this just a small backstage habit, or a glimpse of something that had been hidden all along? That brief moment between Kim Taehyung and Jungkook didn't immediately explode into a major conversation. It built slowly, quietly, making it all the more difficult to ignore. As the stage lights in El Paso dimmed and the last echoes of the crowd lingered in the air, the atmosphere backstage took on a heavier, almost cinematic feel. The usually adrenaline-fueled energy that follows a performance felt different, more controlled, more restrained. The staff moved quickly, the members flitted about, yet there was a subtle tension that only those truly paying attention could detect. Amidst it all, Taehyung and Jungkook didn't immediately separate as usual. There was no drama, no overreaction that was precisely what made them stand out. They acted as if nothing had happened, yet their body language spoke otherwise. Taehyung's presence felt slightly closer than usual, and Jungkook, instead of distancing himself, matched that closeness in a way that felt deliberate, even if unspoken. For longtime BTS fans, it was small changes like these that sparked questions, not the grand, obvious gestures, but the subtle consistency that followed. As fancams began to emerge from different angles, the narrative only became more complex. From one angle, it looked like a spontaneous act in the crowd, but from another, the timing, the gazes, and the lack of hesitation told a different story. The more you looked, the more details emerged, movements that were more synchronized, yet also more deliberate, as if there were an invisible boundary they were both aware of. The distance between them wasn't great, but it felt measured, like a silent agreement formed in the brief moment before. Interestingly, the reactions of those around them seemed unremarkable. The other members continued their activities as usual. The staff remained focused. There was no visible disturbance. But sometimes the absence of reaction speaks volumes in an environment where everything is observed and recorded. Maintaining normalcy can be the most powerful clue. Thousands of spectators were present that night, but only a small fraction noticed the moment immediately. The rest discovered the fragment later through repeated video playback. Each repetition revealed new details, a slightly longer gaze, a slower pace, a touch that felt unnecessary but happened nonetheless. Speculation spread quickly, but certainty remained elusive. Some attributed it to a natural comfort between two people who had been together for years. Others saw something deeper, something accidentally revealed when the line between performance and reality blurred slightly. But what kept this moment alive wasn't just the act. It was what happened afterward. No explanation, no resolution, just a silence that allowed interpretations to unfold endlessly. Over time, more perspectives emerged, and instead of clarifying things, they added layers of meaning. Taehyung's movements seemed more measured. His steps adjusted before approaching, not hastily, but precisely. Jungkook's response also showed no surprise. It was as if the gesture had been understood even before it happened. Small details like this deepened the question, for such reactions rarely occur without reason. Amidst the hustle and bustle backstage, their interaction felt detached, as if in its own space. Even the moment they broke contact wasn't sudden. It was gradual, long enough to feel deliberate, yet brief enough to remain undeniable. This balance was what kept it captivating, too obvious to ignore, yet too subtle to be certain. The discussion evolved from simply what happened to why it felt different. Small moments from before were compared, patterns were sought, and while nothing truly proved anything, they all felt connected. What made it even harder to ignore was the consistency, not one major event, but a series of small details that kept emerging. As the fragments of the incident continued to circulate, Attention was no longer focused on a single fleeting second, but rather on the entire evening. Every tiny movement began to be examined more closely. It was as if a fine thread connected each interaction into a coherent narrative. Nothing stood out blatantly, yet it was precisely this inconspicuousness that made everything feel more powerful and difficult to ignore. In some additional footage, one could see how the rhythm of their steps remained in sync even in the midst of a crowd. It wasn't a contrived similarity, rather, a harmony that emerged naturally, as if they were moving at the same frequency without needing to signal each other. This might seem simple, but to those who paid attention, there was a nuance that was difficult to explain with ordinary logic. Then another detail emerged that further deepened the curiosity. The direction of their gazes seemed to align at certain times. It didn't last long. It's a fleeting moment, but it's enough to leave the impression that a silent communication is taking place. Moments like these are often overlooked, but when put together with the other pieces, they begin to form a more complex pattern. On the other hand, both of their facial expressions remain calm, showing no drastic changes. This calmness, in fact, raises new questions. For in a situation full of pressure and scrutiny, maintaining a neutral expression can be deliberate. There's no sign of panic, no glaring awkwardness, only a stability that feels too neat to be accidental. As time passes, their interaction doesn't diminish, but rather becomes more subtle. The distance they maintain feels consistent, neither too close nor too far. It's as if there's an invisible line they consistently respect, a boundary never crossed, yet always present in both of their consciousness. The next observation comes from the way they respond to their surroundings, how both remain focused on their respective activities, yet attuned to the same spatial dynamics. No movements clash, everything flows with a steady rhythm, creating the impression that coordination occurs effortlessly. As time passes, public attention is no longer solely seeking definitive answers but is beginning to savor the resulting mystery. Many are realizing that perhaps not everything needs to be explained directly. Sometimes it is precisely the ambiguity that makes a moment feel more vivid and memorable. In various discussions, a new perspective has emerged that attempts to see this incident from a simpler perspective, that the apparent closeness could stem from a long-standing habit that has developed over the years. However, while this explanation sounds plausible, there remains a small part that feels incompletely answered. Perhaps that's why this moment never truly disappears, not because it offers answers, but because it refuses to be explained. It lives between possibilities, between what is seen and what is felt. And as long as that boundary remains blurred, as long as there is no certainty that closes this story, this moment will continue to linger silent, but never truly forgotten.